They're troublemakers. They have one agenda, to create trouble. Throw them all in jail, that's where they belong.
Eux autres, ils ont essayé de faire du bien, puis les gouvernements ne sont pas catholiques tant que ça non plus, là, hein?
I do believe that they are being made examples of. I do believe that there's some moving parts behind here that we don't know about, that they are saying to them, hold these people up as examples to make sure that nobody else does this again to the government. Don't protest this government.
Alexa Lavoie for Rebel News, reporting from Ottawa. And today, organizers of the 2022 Freedom Convoy that pushed back peacefully against tyrannical COVID mandates at the time, Tamara Lich and Chris Barber, are back in court for several days of sentencing submissions. The Crown prosecutor is now seeking 7 years in jail for Tamara and 8 years for Chris, along with the seizures of his truck, famously known as Big Red. While Rebel boss Ezra Levin is inside the courtroom live tweeting the proceedings, my videographer Guillaume Roy and I are here outside with the billboard truck to gather reactions from Ottawa residents about the Freedom Convoy and the Crown's sentencing demands. The Freedom Convoy began at the end of January 2022 in response to vaccine and COVID measures targeting truckers, specifically restrictions that prevented unvaccinated drivers from crossing the US-Canada border. What followed was a 3-week protest that remained peaceful despite the participation of tens of thousands of people from all walks of life. However, the mainstream and government-funded media worked hard to portray the movement as extremist and racist, parroting Prime Minister Trudeau's narrative.
Qui sont extrémistes.
Qui croient pas dans la science, qui sont souvent misogynes, souvent racistes. Il faut faire un choix en tant que leader, en tant que pays. Est-ce qu'on tolère ces gens-là?
But did the media spin actually influence Canadians' opinion? Let's find out. Can I just ask quickly, what did you think of the Freedom Convoy?
I think it was horrendous, right? I mean, these were terrorists causing grief to all of the residents of Ottawa, frankly embarrassing Canadians like ourselves, embarrassing Albertans like ourselves. I wish they never did that, and I really do hope that they get what they deserve in court. I think it was ridiculous. That's why Pierre Poilievre in his own riding got booted out, and I think that should really tell something to the people.
You're asking the wrong guy. I moved here from Alberta, and I know some of the guys that were in that convoy. Mm-hmm. And I know what they did to my city of Ottawa. They should all be in jail. This was a premeditated, deliberate attempt to break the law. They came from Alberta, they disrupted things in Ottawa, and they should be thrown in jail.
It was a problem.
Yeah, can you
I live around here. It was a problem. I had a lot of threats from people yelling at me for wearing a mask, people coming over in front of my house, ringing bells, yelling freedom, 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 interfering with conversations with neighbors, because I live across from where they were staying. Mm-hmm. So it was intrusive and it was unnecessary. I don't think they accomplished anything except to make people dislike them more.
Le fait de se ramasser dans un jacuzzi à l'arrière d'un truck, je trouvais ça idiot. Je pense qu'il y avait du temps à perdre.
I found it very hopeful. I was overseas. I was glued to my phone. I finally felt that people's voices were being heard because we were being, squelched and gagged, as we still are, basically.
I think it was a great big waste of time. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they should have stayed out west. Not allowed to come into someone else's city and shut it down. I don't care what your political beliefs are. If you don't like it, take it up with your local member of parliament so you don't come into somebody else's city and do what you did and think that you're fighting for the majority. You're the fringe. Like, you're the minority fighting for what your interests are. You're not fighting for what my interests are and what people of Ottawa's interests are.
The small fringe minority of people who are on their way to Ottawa or who are holding unacceptable views that they're expressing do not represent the views of Canadians.
Terrible.
For which reason?
Oh, vaccinations are important.
Yeah?
Yep.
Martial law was definitely an extreme measure that they took. I felt it wasn't really granted, but other than that, I'm for the freedom riders actually. So.
Contre leur mouvement liberté, c'est sûr.
Le grabuge qu'ils ont fait. Grabuge.
C'est un mouvement d'extrême droite et...
Oui.
On a bloqué la carte bancaire.
Oui.
Ce n'est pas juste. Mais il y a un problème de pouvoir politique assez mafieux. Voilà. J'ai l'impression qu'on est dirigé par la mafia. Voilà. C'est pas les dirigeants, ils sont pas vraiment pour le peuple.
That was stupid.
Yeah?
A lot of noise. A lot of noise and unnecessary traffic.
The Freedom Convoy makes sense if they don't want to go. A matter of fact, if I didn't have a business and had to go and to work and I couldn't get in because I wouldn't have the vaccination, I wouldn't went. Right. It makes sense, yes. People's got to stand up for what they want, but some people have no choice.
C'est tombé dans l'extrême.
OK.
À mon opinion, à moi, là, c'était un peu être extrême droite. C'était ni trop, tu sais, les gens n'étaient pas capables de se modérer.
They're exercising their rights to protest. That's all I have to say.
Well, I support them 100%, although it's overreach. You know, the government obviously is having too much overreach as a double standard, and I hope she gets off scot-free. There should be no charges because there was no fatalities. Although there's a lot of fatalities with and the government mandates and everything else that affected people that lost their jobs and so on and so forth.
You know what? I'm the owner of this place, and every day we have trouble about that, guys. So we close the door. You have issue. It was a lot of problems about the city, and it was a big frustration.
The business that stayed open say that it was the best month of their life regarding money and the business in general because they stayed open during the convoy.
No. Well, one business closed for 6 months. 6 months. Think about that. Employees lost job. We lost the business.
Is it due to the convoy or is it due to the government policies?
COVID, government policies, and convoy. Okay. Nobody doing okay. We have some support from the mayor. We received some grant, to supporting our loss. I received 10 grant, my company.
Oh, I thought it was the biggest BS.
BS?
No. Yeah. It was. I disagree with everything they did, how they did it, their misinformation, and there was a huge Western separatist issue, which I also disagreed with, and the way the whole convoy was done, they were basically pushing a lot of garbage. So I have zero respect for the organizers and for the whole thing. They might have had a small point about the right not to take the vaccine, but the way they did it was completely wrong.
How did you react when you heard that the Crown prosecutor is now asking 7 to 8 years in prison?
Absolutely ridiculous. I work in the Byward Market. The crime in the Byward Market is huge. Nobody, they're smoking crack in the streets. Everybody can do whatever they want. People get robbed. Nothing happens. And then, she goes and, she was backing a protest. It was great.
Overkill.
Yeah?
Most definitely, yeah. Maybe 30 days or something like that, but no. 7 and 8 years, no, that's ridiculous.
Again, that's the justice system. It's up to them. They know how things manage and how Canada is how it is.
Pas d'accord pantoute. Pantoute. Ils méritent pas ça. Ils méritent pas ça. Eux autres, ils ont essayé de faire du bien, puis les gouvernements ne sont pas catholiques tant que ça non plus, là, hein?
I don't agree with that.
Why?
Well, I don't think he did that much wrong. Free speech, is it? There was no crimes committed, were there?
Peut-être un peu intense. Il n'y a pas personne de mort, il n'y a pas...
So these redneck, they're troublemakers. They have one agenda, to create trouble. Throw them all in jail, that's where they belong.
I think whatever the Crown asks for, the judicial system should be allowed to run. I think it's absolutely ridiculous when politicians, like Trump is doing in the U.S., right, firing people in the judicial system. That's unacceptable. So Poilievre and his some of the, well, Polyev, first of all, not even as an MP right now, making comments that are contrary to what the judicial system is trying to do, completely inappropriate.
Initially, they were anti-immigration. They were gun lobbyists. They belonged to a different group than the one they portrayed themselves as being part of here. And they hid behind the Freedom Convoy, I think, in order to pass on their views about they're racists, you know, and nobody brought that up as much, but there was a lot of racism going on up there near Parliament, and people of color were being harassed and called names, and this had nothing to do with freedom, as they call it. I think it's just that group was kind of like white supremacists, to be honest.
I think that's about right. Yeah. I mean, that's the laws, so if they don't like it, then too bad, you can go somewhere else. But yeah, I think it's terrible what they did. Yeah. They scared a lot of people, and, you know, they shut the city down, and no, I think it was a great big waste of time. So yeah, I think a lot of people in Ottawa feel that way. So, but I know Rebel News. I know you guys are a bit like right-wing kind of things, so.
No,
yeah.
we are just reporting on what is happening, and we were there 1 month straight downtown, and there were no violence. It was always peaceful.
Oh, right. Yeah, okay. Yeah. All right. Well,
but it's what we actually saw and reported on.
Okay. Well, I was here for it as well, and I didn't see that. I saw the city shut down, and I'm not allowed to come into my own city. Can't get into the market, and they're telling you, police telling you to stay away and not come in. And
I don't think that's right. No, I think that's a really excessive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Il faut qu'il soit gracié par, je sais pas moi, s'il y a un président ou un premier ministre, il faut qu'il soit gracié. Qu'est-ce qu'ils ont fait des mal? Ils ont fait du mal à qui?
That seems a bit harsh.
Yeah?
Yes, I think maybe probation, maybe.
It seems rather excessive. It seems rather excessive for I mean, as far as I'm aware, no crimes were committed, but, that's just me. It is a democracy. People have a right to protest. There was a lot of noise, but last time, other than that.
The justice system's kind of weird, where we have the person who killed someone in a drunk driving accident and is serving 2 years. So I don't know. I mean, it had an enormous impact, and they shut down this city. But I don't know. That seems an awful long time.
That's far excessive. I don't think there's been any cases of over even 6 months to a year with mischief that doesn't involve any violence or any damage to property, and there's more. I'm totally against it.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think they were doing anything illegal that would warrant 7 to 8 years in prison.
Yeah, I think it's fair. Maybe not that long, but they certainly should. They certainly should be sitting in the shade for a year or two.
Ils veulent montrer au monde qu'ils ont le pouvoir. C'est un peu comme Trump, tu sais. Je suis propriétaire de la planète, tu sais. Les autres, c'est du Canada, là, mais...
Who should go in jail? Trudeau? Trudeau should go to jail.
It's an overreach. I would think 7-8 years, yeah. Because people were going crazy at the time, and people were trying to do whatever they could to, keep afloat.
And also, I think it's ridiculous the amount of money they're spending now. How many years ago was that? 3 years ago?
3 years ago.
Yeah, 3 years ago. And they're still wasting all that money on lawyers, barristers, and all this stuff and everything, And they should be giving the money to the poor people.
Moi, je suis pour ça, les lois.
Les lois?
Oui.
7 à 8 ans?
Ça n'a pas d'importance, c'est eux autres qui décident. Alors, si...
I mean, it's political because they were political, and they came here hoping to take over. I mean, I still never understood the reason why they wanted to hang Trudeau. I saw their trucks on my street with, kill Trudeau and a noose hanging from the back of the truck. And I thought, what is that for? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, Trudeau is one of the most benign leaders we've had. I mean, he didn't commit any atrocities, and yet he was being treated.
It's all political. It's posturing. Yeah, it's not fair. They're trying to make sure that nobody else will ever protest again against the government. I mean, come on, it's a no-brainer.
Maybe to set a lesson to say this is not how you operate. I'm not sure. I haven't followed it really much that closely, but, you know, it was over and they got kicked out and that's it. So they went home and it blew up in their faces and, yeah, they made themselves look a bit silly, I think, in the eyes of a lot of people.
Do you see a kind of two-tier justice system?
Yes, I mean, we have to clean that up in Canada for sure. We've got to pay attention to the way we conduct ourselves.
Oh yes, there's obviously a two-tier justice system, and it could be even three-tier.
Do you think there is a kind of two-tier policing where some people can actually like avoid jail time, but we are actually pressuring for 8 years in jail time for the leaders?
Well, that's a whole different situation. Like, if you're talking about the convoy, stick to talking about the convoy. Don't compare apples to oranges and say, well, a sex offender didn't get put in jail, but someone who, you know, organized, you know.
Some people burning the Canadian flag,
Well,
some
that
people...
would be, I don't know if that happens in the convoy. If that happens in the convoy, that would be a crime. I don't know what the exact consequence.
But those people didn't receive any jail time for burning the Canadian flag, doing graffiti.
Then they should probably, because I mean that's a disrespect to the country if you're burning a flag for sure. I've never been in the Army Cadets, but friends of mine have, and I remember them being told, you know, you don't disrespect the flag. You know?
The Freedom Convoy for me, so for people that don't know, I was a downtown Ottawa resident. I lived literally just blocks up here. For me, it was honestly life-saving. It was one of the most incredible, love-filled experiences of my life. I'd been living in downtown Ottawa that had been locked down and suffering for over a year. When they came, it was hope. It was, you know, I was free from my house. I was with people. We were out. We were talking. It was incredible.
I live in Ottawa. And so I actually came down. It was a love fest. I mean, you know, that's really what it was. And they were representing the views of a lot of Canadians, including me, in terms of the whole government overreach and authoritarianism and lies, just lying to people.
Well, I thought that it was a clear example of the mainstream media obviously not telling the truth, having a biased narrative going into it. That has been proven time and time again. I was on the ground at the Freedom Convoy reporting of it, and I mean, I saw people from all over the country coming together in a peaceful way. I thought the reaction was absurd. The decision to invoke the Emergencies Act has been proven to be unconstitutional, and there wasn't anything that presented itself to me as dangerous or could be even perceived that way. I mean, there was obviously a blockade because that was the objective of the protest, but there were security lanes for people to drive through, for police, ambulances to drive through, and the whole objective was to get leaders face to face with the people. And ultimately, I think the people who were involved in the Freedom Convoy and all the protesters can look back at it as really a success, because immediately after the Freedom Convoy, provincial governments dropped mandates, and that was the objective. And the way that it was perceived here versus around the world was totally different. The rest of the world saw what we saw on the ground, which was a peaceful protest, a Canadian protest, done in a typical Canadian way. And that's why it was replicated all over the world. Here in Canada, however, it was perceived as a completely different way by mainstream media, and I think now we're seeing the results of that mainstream misinformation.
How do you explain that lots of people here in Ottawa have the complete opposite view?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have that view because they weren't here. I've noticed that a lot of the people that are commenting, even from Ottawa, they didn't actually attend the convoy, and what they're mainly doing is repeating or parroting the same things the media said. So they'll talk about white supremacy, they'll talk about racism. I mean, you were on the ground there, I was on the ground there, and I met all kinds of people, every race, creed, color, age. It wasn't racist. There was everybody there. It was Canadians that all had an issue with what was going on.
Well, how did you react when you heard that the Crown prosecutor is seeking 7 to 8 years in prison?
Well, they're making an example out of Tamara Leach and Chris Barber. That's what the government is trying to do. I think the Crown wants to make an example out of them to show the country that a protest like the Freedom Convoy is not allowed. You're not allowed to do it. Now, let's think about it. If the protest was for a different cause that the government themselves supported, they wouldn't be seeking this sort of punishment for Tamara Leach and Chris Barber. They're doing it because it was a protest against the government. And we've seen how they approach and they handle other violent criminals. They let them out on the street. They're not getting 7-year prison sentences. They're not getting 8-year prison sentences. They're trying to make an example out of Tamara Leach and Chris Barber, and I think that's wrong. And I think a lot of people can see it too. They might not just want to say it, but I think it's obviously it's totally wrong.
Because I live here, I have been able to. I've been to the most of the trials, so I've seen the Crown's weak case. I've questioned why the judge has allowed things to continue to the degree that they have. I have some legal background. I used to be a court stenographer, so I've sat through courts before. And, well, it doesn't surprise me, because I do believe that they are being made examples of. I do believe that there's some moving parts behind here that we don't know about, that they are saying to them, hold these people up as examples to make sure that nobody else does this again to the government. Don't protest this government.
And I can't say I'm shocked that the Crown's going for that. It should be shocking to everyone. No one ever gets a penalty for mischief of 8 years. We have serious criminals every day that are let loose. People dragging people by cars, people committing murders and being let out on bail. It seems to me that this is entirely political, and it's meant to scare people from standing up and protesting against government. We know that there's definitely a two-tier approach here. Just yesterday, this entire area was shut down by Palestinian protesters, screaming and yelling and banging things, and not a word about that.
Are you saying a two-tier justice system?
Of course. Of course. Violent criminals get let out all the time. They get a slap on the wrist. Sometimes they get their sentences commuted, pushed aside because the process took too long or whatever it might be for process reasons. The Crown just doesn't even put them in jail for violent crime. Tamara Leach and Chris Barber are not violent criminals, right? Everybody knows that. And so this is another example of two-tier policing. And we're seeing it all over the world, but it's particularly drastic in this case. It really is. There was a report a couple weeks ago of a violent criminal getting their sentence commuted because of process reasons. And I think that the Conservative Party actually have been right to publicly comment on this and to point out that this is wrong. It's rare, I think, but it's nice to see that.
You can still donate generously, either to protect Tamara or to offset the legal cost at protecttamara.com. So go over there, chip in what you can, and thank you in advance to stand with Tamara Leach.